Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lunchtime Special podcast, a show about life, death, and everything in between. We hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Lunchtime Special podcast. My name is Ian and I'll be your host today. On today's panel, we have Brad.
Hello.
Spiro.
G'day.
Vinod.
Hello.
Atish.
Hi.
And a debut appearance from our resident member, Saranga.
Hey guys.
Awesome. So let's get this podcast underway. So with the release of two major superhero movies in the last month or so, Avengers Infinity War and Deadpool 2, we decided to figure out whether superhero movies and superheroes in general are good role models for children. Now, before we begin, if you guys are listening to this straight away, there may potentially be spoilers. So if you haven't seen Avengers Infinity War or Deadpool 2 yet, you might want to consider listening to this later. I can't guarantee there won't be any spoilers, but there most likely won't be. But just in case, so we don't get any angry fans, we'll just put that disclaimer up the front. Yeah, so what I like to do is just talk about some of the characters that are in these two major films, particularly Avengers and Deadpool, and whether they are appropriate role models for children. Now, definitely with Avengers, you've got quite the mix of superheroes. So you've got someone like Captain America, who essentially is the moral barometer of the Marvel franchise. And then you have other characters like Tony Stark, who is a genius, but also a little bit of a douche. You also have characters like the Hulk, where his entire character is about being angry and smashing things. Now, I want to throw this to the group. Do you guys see superheroes in general as good role models for children? And if so, which particular superhero do you think are good role models? Or if not, why not?
I'll start off since it's my first podcast as well. My view on this is that it is a good thing to have superheroes as a role model, because the fact is that by viewing these movies, you get to understand the different characters, different personalities within yourself. You can compare and see how it is. And for example, if you take the Hulk, the fact that he's in a constant state of frustration, if you want to say, the fact that he's always mixed in his feelings and his emotions to see whether he wants to get angry or not, that sort of thing is something that is worthwhile for a kid that is growing up as well, to understand that this emotion within you that you wanted to control but you can't control at the same time. So it's more of a lesson learned premises that you have, that they can really learn from that. So I think I agree as to you should have a role models in your life, and this is a perfect way of looking at it.
I agree with Ryan. I think superheroes are great for being role models. Superheroes tend to be very archetypal, very Jungian. They're all heroes, but they all have different aspects of the angry hero, the wounded hero. Batman's a classic. You've got an archetypal story. You've got this child that suffers a tragedy, and from that tragedy builds himself up to become Batman. So you get that evolution. And then you have your Superman, orphan child, that's raised in a totally alien environment to him.
Yeah.
And becomes a national world, hero, like a hero for the entire planet, effectively. These archetypes are consistent within mythology. So they're almost a modern take on your classic mythological themes. So then by looking at an archetype, you can then learn lessons from the archetype. Another classic archetype would be Loki in the Avengers, because even though he's technically a villain, he's actually not. He has he's on the fringe. He's the classic trickster archetype. He's neither good nor bad. bad, he's kind of out for himself.
Yeah.
He can be helpful one moment and then turn on everyone in the end. But then that's a classic archetype. People can relate to that character. They can relate and learn things, potentially like what is actually honorable, what is dishonorable behavior.
Yeah.
Again, so that classic idea of a hero, superhero is that guide that can take a child and show them the way of how to potentially behave in a certain situation.
So with that in mind, though, I see someone like Tony Stark and Iron Man as a character that a lot of people would admire. But at the same time, if you look at his actual characteristics, he's rich, he's arrogant, he's a bit of a smart aleck. In previous movies, he's an alcoholic, he's suffering PTSD. He's got all of these negatives, which in most cases a child's not going to have, but then replicate those particular things. They're like, oh, Tony Stark drinks alcohol. Let's go drink alcohol.
I think, yeah, that's a good point that you made, that there is that possibility that they will do this sort of replication and mimic sort of behavior, and that you're going to find that anyways in any situation, that when they're growing up, they're always going to find any avenue and try and mimic that. But that's with anything that comes into the media, into the arena, that it can be taken as granted, it can be taken as good or as evil in that sense. What do you think, Brad, about?
I mean, just on Tony Stark, I mean, when you think of it realistically, it's a man who has built his own weapon in his basement and he's now using it for his own deed, right? Like, the police aren't necessarily supporting it. It's a man who's just gone out on his own. Can you imagine that in actual society?
Yeah.
I mean, putting a real spin on it rather than just looking at the movies and they're all like, oh my God, it's Iron Man. Like, imagine that in real life when you've got a obnoxious rich guy who's just built his own weapon in his basement and now he's sort of going out in the street.
Yeah.
How do you think society would actually react to that?
Well, I mean, that's something that is explored in the Batman films about how Batman is a vigilante and he's not really a hero. He just goes around beating criminals for his own benefit. And it's something that is very common amongst not just comic book films, it's in general. When any superheroes fight supervillains, there's collateral damage, which would be avoided if you just called the police, you know. And if you do extrapolate that and you take it to the playground example, then the kid should be going to the teacher, right? But if the kid is thinking, I'm Iron Man or I'm Batman or I'm a superhero, and he goes in and tries to break up a fight or something like that, he's more likely to either A, get beaten up, or B, get detention because he'll be blamed as the one that started or continued the fight. But he's following the ideals of being the hero. So as a parent, Spiro, do you worry about that?
Well, I see it already now with my children. They watch television and they watch their kids shows and they somewhat emulate what they see on telly. My daughter, she watches a superhero-based type cartoon called PJ Masks, and you got these little kids. I think Brad knows about it.
Yeah.
And they dress up in their pajamas. They become superheroes. And
Yeah.
my daughter loves them. There's cat speed and owl eyes and gecko strength, and she will literally call them out and then try and use them on me if I'm trying to prevent her from getting a biscuit or a cookie. She'll say gecko strength and try and push me out of the way to get to the biscuit. So that's pretty harmless. In the playground, potentially, yes, you have another kid equally wanting to do that, and there'll be a clash. That's a part of their education. There's a certain level of innocence and harmlessness in all that. As a parent, it would also be my responsibility to guide them. So if they are emulating something, to say, hey, that's all good, but don't try and chop your brother in the head. That's my job. So kids will do what they do, and it's up to the adults to supervise.
So would you say that although a superhero could be a good or bad role model, it would also depend on other role models? So it wouldn't be completely on that superhero, right? You would also have the basis of you need to step in and explain what's real, what's not, what is still appropriate for that person or that hero to be doing and what's not.
Correct.
As an example, I mean, in society, we're told break up the fight. Whereas, I mean, superheroes, they just wait until both parties are knocked down before they sort of stop.
Mm.
So I'd like to bring Vinod into the conversation because I know that he has a really good story about a superhero in India where the government had to intervene because of people mimicking this particular superhero. Would you like to tell us that story?
The story is related to one series which is broadcasting in India, and the serial name was Shaktiman. It was very, very good related to advantage. First of all, I want to say, because Shaktiman's related to the some bad things and as well as good thing. But if you will see the serial of the Shaktiman, then always they want to show the advantages. But after some time, because Shakti was what Shaktiman does, he was just flying on over the building. He just climbed on the building and he jumped on the building while he was rotating, and he was moving one place to other place because he can fly. So the children were copying there, and thus most of the children died because they jumped on the building. They want to copy the Shaktiman. But that serial doesn't want to give that particular things. That serial want to give the power of the yoga and power of the human, because that serials want to say the five things human have, like airs and sky and water and other parts.
Elements.
They want to say, yeah, these element, if you can use in your real life, then and then anyone can do anything, because and this is a real thing. But yes, always it's happened sometime, because the children's doesn't think this is good or this is bad, and they want to copy it. And so that's why
Yeah.
that was very bad. But no, I am also the big friend of Shaktiman. So
Yeah.
when I was child. But yes, and realized then after some time they put on one disclaimer on that particular serial. Okay, this serial is not this, all the characters are not real stakes, please do not copy. So something like that, they followed that particular disclaimer
Yeah.
in when the serial starts.
So you
Yeah, the
raised a
do
good
not try
point.
this at home kind of thing. Just for everyone at home, we will include a link to the show notes with Vinod's superhero that we're just talking about.
Yeah, Ian. So you raised a good point. The fact that there's this underlying factor with any comics or any movies and such is the values that they bring on upon the kid when they grow up. They also learn two things. They try to mimic the actions of this superhero, but they also learn the underlying value of being a human as well. So the first impression for a kid is the fact that this is a super human, whereas the meaning behind the story is always something that the kid can learn from.
The
So,
superhero being a good guy, thriving to be a better person, right? That's what
Yeah,
they're really
the
trying to
underlying,
do.
yeah, even though they have a human life, the normal life, they also have another life where they want to make sure that they can improve themselves even better. That underlying message is something that's really beneficial for a kid, but it's something that gets lost in translation sometimes as well.
Atish, you've been suspiciously quiet during our podcast today. I want to throw you this question at you, given what we've just spoken about, kids mimicking their heroes. Would you see the value of being a let's do lots of yoga man? And would you think that would be a good influence on kids growing up?
So this topic is very mysterious from considering from many perspectives. Looking at it from the perspective that whenever a new superhero comes into the market, which is a quite frequent occurrence now in the media, very next day I find the supermarket flooded by all the various items which can be created in linkage with this superhero. So whatever is provided on a television or YouTube or on a movie, any way of communicating to the children, all these items related to that superhero is available on the stock to be bought. So that makes me wonder that is it the movie which is the purpose, or that economical interests they are following, they are the purpose.
Well, this is definitely true in the case of Star Wars because it's quite well known that George Lucas created certain characters, Jar Jar Binks, to essentially sell toys to kids. And it wasn't always successful, but you could look at Star Wars 7 and BB-8. That character's entire purpose is for A, comedic relief, and B, to sell round spheres to children. So is it all commercialism? Is it that the real purpose of superheroes?
So, well, another point I would like to add quickly here is about who is the kid. Kid, if you consider kid from an objective purpose, objective perspective, you will find that kid is a perceiving entity which looks at everything with curiosity, which looks at everything with wonder, with questions. For example, a kid looks at the father as the superhero. he sees or she sees their parents as superheroes. So everywhere, wherever they go, they distinguish. They can count